Hi friends, my name is Alex and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be testing out a couple different mineral SPF powders. If you saw recently, I posted a video about how to apply liquid sunscreen over makeup using a beauty blender. And after watching that, you may wonder why go to all this trouble and jump through all these hoops when we have SPF powders out on the market. So I did pick up a couple, and then in the middle of me doing research for this video, I actually found out some really interesting data on these powder SPFs. So today we're going to be looking at the Physicians Formula. This is the Mineral Wear Broad Spectrum SPF 30, and this can be found at most drugstores and like Walmart, Target, that kind of thing. And then I also did want to get at least two that you could find at most stores, like big box stores or drugstores. This is the L'Oreal Paris True Match Mineral Makeup, and this is only SPF 19. And then one of the most popular brands that I picked up, this is the Derma E Essentials Mineral Powder SPF 30. And this pops up in most posts and videos where people are talking about these mineral powders, so I definitely wanted to grab this guy. And then lastly, I got the Brush On Block UVA UVB protection, water resistant, 80 minutes broad spectrum SPF 30, and I did pick up the refill pack instead of the actual giant one. It looks a bit like this. Most mineral SPFs are all built this way. They have the cartridge at the bottom and then they have a brush hiding up on top, but I'll talk a bit in a moment about why I got that refill pack. So before I start playing with these, I want to talk to you a bit about what I found, and I'm going to be getting ready with the rest of my makeup while I do that. Before I apply makeup, I am starting off with a good base coat of sunscreen. This is the Skin AQUA Rohto UV Moisture Gel. This is the SPF 50, and this is a Japanese chemical sunscreen that I really like. As you can see, it just goes on really nicely, completely clear. Doesn't leave any white cast, and it doesn't have that really strong alcohol smell that a lot of chemical sunscreens have. So that's why I really enjoy this one, especially under makeup. But as I was doing the research for this post, I found a really interesting video by Lab Muffin. She has a YouTube channel and also a website, and she's just an awesome lady. She really knows her stuff, and she posts always the science and like the math and the numbers behind exactly how she got to the conclusion that she got to. And her stuff has just been really useful. So if you have not checked her out, definitely go look at her. But she did a video a while back about different ways to apply makeup or sunscreen over makeup, and she went over doing sunscreen with beauty blenders like I talked about before, and then also the powders. So what she shared was that actually, so back in the 80s, there were studies done on about 10,000 women, and it wasn't primarily focused on makeup products, but they did go over how much face powder they used every day. Most sunscreen powders, they don't actually tell you how much they have to use to get the full SPF advertised. If you Google like how much sunscreen you're supposed to use on your face or on your body, they'll tell you about a shot glass full for your entire face and body, and that's with a liquid sunscreen. But it's really hard to tell how much you're supposed to be using with a powder. So in this study, they did ask over 10,000 women about all these different products, and when it came to face powder, they said the average that they used was 0.085 grams, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a face powder. You don't really need to use a lot. So Color Science is one of the really big mineral sunscreen powder brands. They have the Color Science's Total Protect powder, and it comes at a pretty hefty price tag. It's $69, and you're only getting 6 grams of product. So Color Sciences is actually one of the brands that did release study data on how they came to the conclusion that their SPF was water resistant. They took participants and they had them all apply the powder just of their own accord. It was about over 100 women, and then they looked at how much powder they actually used and how long they used the brush, because pretty much every single mineral SPF, it comes in this kind of container. It's just loose powder down here, and the way it disperses is as you're shaking it, gravity feeds it through the brush. So they averaged out how long and how much these women were using, and they came to the conclusion that it was 0.24 grams, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're comparing that to the average amount that women were found to be using in that study, which was 0.085, I mean, that's almost 3 times the amount of powder that they were using. And I expect a lot of that is probably because, since obviously it's an SPF powder, I would imagine those women would use a lot more since they knew it had SPF protection rather than like a normal face powder. But still, that's 8 times the amount we usually use. And even if in that first study I mentioned back in the 80s where they went over those 10,000 women, even if they weren't all completely doing an entire face of makeup, really heavy everything, that's a lot of room for leeway. So in this color science study, after they figured out the 0.24, they had a couple participants apply that 0.24 grams, and then the researchers did use a little bit excess because I guess they were applying it with a like a powder puff, so they did account for anything that would be absorbed into the puff. And then they had the users sit in the jacuzzi with fresh water, not hot, for 80 minutes, so then they could measure the SPF on the skin before and after and see if it was still at the advertised 55. So before, they were all sitting at 55, and then after they got out of the jacuzzi test, the average was about 54 with SPF, which is insane. So the color sciences, it does have data backing it up, and it does seem like a really good product. But then we come back to that price tag of $69 for 6 grams. So I was poking around the Color Science product page and I found something interesting. Right under all of the details of the product, it says it's a 90-day supply with normal usage. If you divide that 6 grams by 0.24, that's only 25 uses. And you're supposed to be reapplying this every 2 hours. So if you're out and about for like 4 to 6 hours, you're using that 2 to 3 times. And at that $69 price tag, you're looking at $2.76 every time you reapply this stuff. So that was very discouraging. I found most of this information out after I had already placed a big Amazon order with all of these mineral powders, so I was feeling pretty discouraged after I found all of that out. Lab Muffin did also post some numbers about what would happen if you applied a normal amount of powder versus what you would actually have to do, the 0.25, to get that full SPF. So say you had a powder sunscreen that was SPF 50 and you applied a normal amount, you're only getting SPF 5.5, which is almost nothing. Dermatologists recommend that you use at least an SPF 15 to get any protection, and still SPF 15 is almost nothing, especially if you burn easily. So I was just gobsmacked to see that. And then another thing I wanted to talk to you about is, let's start off with the brush on block. So most of the powders that I did pick up for this little test here are all slightly colored. I did get the lightest color of each range. The L'Oreal True Match Mineral did come in the biggest range. Their tones do go quite a bit deep, so that's good for different skin tones. but they are also only an SPF of 19. And then when you're taking into account the fact that you have to use that insane amount of powder, if you used a normal amount of powder, this is basically nothing. So back to the brush on block. I did get the refill container, and the reason I did that is because the kinds that come with this brush, it's just your standard little kabuki brush, and then the powder shakes down. So as you're applying it and shaking it, it gets down. To use enough powder to get enough disperse to actually get any SPF protection, you would have to be doing this for at least 2 minutes. And that entire time you're agitating your makeup, which if you're trying to preserve your makeup with these SPF powders and you're going over it for 2 minutes with a brush, you're going to do some damage. So what I'm doing is I just took an empty lid from a NYC powder and I cleaned it out, and I'm just going to dump this in here so you can actually see how much you get. Now this is the entire container. I have not used the brush on block yet, so let me put it down here and I'll tap it real good to make sure I get everything out. Okay, so this is, I have not touched this. This is straight out. So this is how much you get in one thing. Like, that's it. And then to get that full protection, you would have to use a 1/14 of this every time. And if you're applying this every 2 hours, that's a lot of powder. You're going to have some extreme cake face going on. So what I'm going to do is, I have my base coat of foundation on. I'm going to apply one here, one here, one here, one here. So let's start off with this brush on block. I am going to be using just a regular fluffy brush with this stuff. I really don't like the kabuki brushes that come with these. They're hard to clean. They're synthetic, not very good bristles. They're all about the same. They're this black bristle. And the other thing I really don't like about this, for the Derma E, so it has the cap. It's not retractable. So you have this cap and you have to try to get it back over all these bristles again. So what I've had to do is just like pinch and try to guide it, and you still have little bristles that get stuck. So it's really not a good design. A lot of them have a retractable sleeve that comes up, so it guides all the bristles back into place. But if you're just trying to shove a cap back onto bristles, it doesn't work. So first, we're going to be going in with the brush on block, and I'm just dipping it into the powder lid I have down here and tapping off the excess. So I'm going to put the brush off block on my left cheek here. So if you're trying to actually get decent SPF protection from this, you're going to have to go in multiple times with a lot of product to actually get anything. And now this is the lightest shade that they do sell. This is supposed to be a translucent powder, but as you can see, it's very beige. I have very, very pale skin, so that's more of a problem for me. I'm sure most people won't be bothered by that, but you can see already it's a little too peachy for my skin there. So just keep in mind, if you're expecting anything from these powders, you're gonna have to go in multiple times to get enough coverage here. And already, I mean, I don't wear very heavy makeup. I really like the light and breezy makeups, or I just go bare most days, to be honest, since skincare is my chosen realm of beauty. But I mean, it doesn't look bad. The powder itself, it's a pretty standard powder. It's not sinking in anything weird. It's not pulling my foundation. It looks just fine. You just really have to be realistic with yourself that to apply these enough to get any protection, you're going to have to use a lot of product. And I just think the way that these are advertised with like SPF 30 and the easy pressed powder, it's just really misleading because they don't tell you how much you're supposed to use. And it's nowhere near the amount of powder you would use. It's over 3 times the amount a normal person would use, which is just crazy. So next up, I'm going to be using the Physicians Formula. This is the Mineral Wear SPF 30. This is a pressed powder, which I do like more than the loose powder. I think it's easier to load up your brush really well using a pressed powder like this. But I'm just going really heavy, and again, this is way more than I would usually use. I'm just really loading this up. And then also, I think to get a really thorough coverage, it's better to pat into the skin than to drag, because you want to be getting a thorough coat of your powder here. So, and I usually pat into the skin anyway. I think the powder sets down nicer when you do it than buffing it. So the Physicians Formula is a little bit paler. I do really like the pressed powder better. This is the only pressed mineral powder with SPF that I could find. Everything else was loose powder, or it's in these little shaker brushes. So with these shaker brushes, like I was saying, you really have to work at them to get them out because it's just gravity fed. You have to pounce it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap it. And as you can see, like almost nothing comes out. You have to really get aggressive with it to get any product out. So, and these do have a tendency to sprinkle down your shirt while you're trying to use them, since it's just continually feeding random little bursts of powder. As you can see, I'm kind of chasing it around here. The Derma E, it does have a kind of weird smell to it. It's not baby powder. It's like a very slightly acidic, powdery smell. It's kind of weird. This is supposed to be chamomile. It has chamomile extract in it, but chamomile doesn't smell like sour baby powder, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But with these shaker brushes, it's just gonna be, it's impossible to get enough comfortably for regular makeup application, let alone you trying to get extra to get sun protection. It's just really hard to get it out. Like, I'm pouncing here and barely any is coming out. So I think having to do this every 2 hours would just be really frustrating. Like, I can see that it's on there and that my skin tone is a little bit more yellow up there where I've applied it, but I know it's not nearly enough. I would have to continue doing this for 4 to 5 minutes to get enough powder to come out. And then the brush on the Derma E Essentials, it's not removable. A lot of them are removable so that you can take the brush off and wash it just to keep things hygienic. I don't know why it's not removable on this guy. Or actually, I suppose you can take off this entire thing, but it's all attached to the chamber where the powder comes through. So the powder cartridge is down here, and here's the brush. So you would have to be insanely careful cleaning this out, or you would have to let it dry, bone dry, otherwise you're going to get powder caked in the bottom. That's pretty squeaky. So you'd have to let that dry completely before using it again, or you would have moisture in the middle of the chamber. You'd probably have to get, I don't know, a pipe cleaner or something to get in there, because there's going to be powder stuck in the chamber and it's going to get wet and turn gloopy. So I'm not sure how you would clean that effectively. If I do decide to use this more in the future, I'm probably going to just dump it into a compacts to use it. One of my favorite face powders I've used for many years is the Coty Airspun, and it's loose powder, and it has a lid like this. and then it's just in a big shaker with huge holes, and you just dump it upside down to get some in the lid. And then all you have to do is just swirl your brush around in there, and that's my favorite way to apply powder like this. Now, the L'Oreal Paris, this is the True Match Mineral. It's only an SPF 19, which I knew going into this. It's a little more depressing now that I know how much protection you're actually getting with a average amount of powder that people use. So the construction of this is a little weird. So we have our main lid, and it goes over the bristles of the brush, and it does have enough clearance to really easily go on there, so you're not having to fight to get the bristles back in the cap. And then the cap comes off the bottom. It's a kind of weird shape to try to hold. And then the powder is in this little shaker. So you can just get the bristles in here. Usually what I do is press the bristles down firmly and then flip it upside down to get more coming through. So I have a decent amount there. And with this one, you really do have to go in and out to get enough product. I like the bristles on this a little bit more than the Derma E. It would be easier to clean. I think these are actually natural bristles here, which is kind of surprising for L'Oreal. I'm not sure how you test between natural and synthetic if you're not sure. I'm sure if you like cut off a little bit and burnt it and see if it melts or burns, that would tell you real quick if it was synthetic or natural. What are you talking about? Huh? Are you helping? I do wish that the cap was a little bit shallower so you could dump product in here to swirl the bristles around easier, because the brush isn't long enough to meet the bottom, so you can't really do that. Okay, so that is the L'Oreal True Match. It does look a lot more natural on my skin. I don't have as much of a unnatural color change. So just to recap, this is the L'Oreal Paris, the Derma E, the Physicians Formula Pressed Powder, and the brush on block here. Out of all of them, just application wise, I really like the Physicians Formula the best because it is a pressed powder, and I feel like it would be a lot easier to cart around in your purse, and it's the easiest to load up your brush really heavily so that you're getting enough product. All of the other ones, you really have to fight them. The brush and block, if you can just dump it into a loose container, it's not that bad. The Derma E, I just really don't like that style of brush. You have to fight to get sprinkles of product, which is just not really effective. And then the L'Oreal Paris is okay. I do like this kind of brush better than the Derma E, especially since you don't have to fight it to get back in the container. But again, it's an SPF of 19, and unless you absolutely loaded this up with product, you're not really getting any protection. So these powders are really nice at first glance. It's easier than trying to load up a beauty blender with sunscreen, but the amount of protection you're getting, it's just not realistic unless you are super diligent and use a ton of product every 2 hours. You're not getting the SPF advertised. I'm just a little bit disappointed with how these are advertised. I think these brands have a responsibility to let you know how much you actually have to be using, especially these little Derma E, because they advertise themselves as just really easy breezy on the go application, or Brush on Block has a brush on block for kids, and it's the exact same product, a smaller amount of product for more money, and it's just advertised towards kids because they're trying to tell moms, oh hey, it's really easy, you can just sprinkle it on their face on the go at the beach and they're good to go. But they're not. you would have to use so much product, and the kid is not going to stand there while you're swirling a brush around for 2 to 3 minutes. That's insane. So if you're trying to apply sunscreen over makeup, I really believe that your best bet is to use a liquid or a spray really carefully over with a beauty blender, or if you have a spray, a non-aerosol spray, to do it over the face. One other thing to keep in mind with the aerosol SPF sprays is that a lot of the product that's actually coming out when you spray it is actually the aerosol. So you do have to use a lot more than it would seem to get that protection, because most of the product coming out is the aerosol. It's not the SPF active ingredients. So do make sure that you're shaking them up really good before you're using them, and do a couple really thin coats and just let it dry in between to get full coverage. I will have a link in the description to a post that I wrote really detailing everything and all the studies I mentioned, and also Lab Muffin's post, so you can see her take on this. But thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!